At the engagement ceremony, my fiancé said, "My ex is a part of my life. Either you accept that, or we call off the engagement." Everyone looked at me. I just quietly said, "All right." And then, it happened in front of everyone. A sea of expectant faces, hushed by the grandeur of the evening. The man who was to be my husband, Jackson Pierce, looked directly at me, his voice booming through the speakers, a challenge, not a declaration of love. "My ex-girlfriend is irreplaceable. If you don't like it, we'll call off this wedding." Every eye swung to me, anticipating tears, a collapse. They didn't know the single word that would shatter their expectations and redefine my entire future. That evening, the Charleston sky was a masterpiece, a canvas ablaze with oranges and purples, framing the dignified silhouettes of church steeples and historic rooftops. Our engagement celebration, a tableau of sophisticated Southern charm and modern grandeur, unfolded at a magnificent estate on the city's outskirts. The air, thick with the delicate perfume of jasmine, resonated with the melodic whispers of a string quartet. This was our night, the public affirmation of Amelia Hayes and Jackson Pierce, presented to the world as the quintessential perfect couple. In a lavender gown, I'd sketched myself, a reflection of my own structured yet elegant architectural aesthetic, navigated the opulent rooms, my smile genuine, my intelligent eyes radiating a warmth that masked a sharp mind and unwavering principles. Beside me, Jackson, impeccably tailored in a bespoke suit, commanded the room. His confident laugh, his easy embrace of old friends, his magnetic charisma. He was the very picture of a New York entrepreneur, the formidable heir to the Pierce Group. We were, to the world, the dream, the brilliant architect and the prince of business. "Amelia, honey, congratulations," my mother murmured, her eyes shimmering with happy tears. "I've never seen you so happy." I hugged her, "Thanks, Mom." Jackson, ever the charmer, draped an arm around her, declaring, "Ma'am, I'll take great care of Amelia." My father, a university professor of few words, offered Jackson a proud clap on the shoulder, seeing in him the intelligent young man who would secure his only daughter's future. Jackson's family, too, beamed with approval. His shrewd father assessed me with satisfaction, a cultured, intelligent, independent architect from a respected Charleston family, the ideal asset to the Pierce legacy. Yet, even in this meticulously curated perfection, fleeting shadows flickered. A childhood friend of Jackson's clapped him heartily. Finally, someone had tamed this wild lion. Jackson's laugh, usually so robust, sounded hollow, his eyes briefly searching for something unseen. I'd felt these unsettling undercurrents before. Those moments when Jackson would suddenly withdraw, his smile dimming as his fingers compulsively scrolled his phone. His swift recovery, his dismissive, "It's nothing, honey, just work stress," always left me to choose belief. And I did. For me, love was anchored in trust, a solid foundation, I believed, built over a year of shared dreams. Tonight, we were celebrating its cornerstone. I couldn't know that, within moments, Jackson himself would wield a giant sledgehammer to reduce it to dust. The evening surged to its crescendo. After a sumptuous dinner serenaded by a smooth jazz trio, the master of ceremonies announced the family speeches. My father offered heartfelt, concise wishes. Jackson's father, more effusive, painted a grand vision of his son's future with me. Then came the moment. A big round of applause for Jackson Pierce and Amelia Hayes. Jackson took the microphone, a broad smile plastered across his face as he surveyed the adoring crowd. "Good evening, dear parents, family, and friends. Thank you for joining us on our happy day." His voice, deep and resonant, filled the hall. Being here next to Amelia is a dream come true. She is an extraordinary woman, intelligent and incredibly talented, and most importantly, she understands me. A ripple of warmth spread through the guests. A few dabbed at their eyes. I gazed at him, my heart swelling with love. This man, my husband-to-be. Then Jackson paused. His smile fractured, morphing into a stark, serious expression. The festive hum of the room subtly faltered. In building a relationship, I believe in one thing, he continued, his eyes now locked on mine, as if we were utterly alone. Absolute honesty. Honesty from the very beginning is the most important pillar. That's why tonight, in front of all of you whom we respect, I want to make one thing clear. A chilling silence descended. Even the jazz trio's melody seemed to recede, absorbed by the growing tension. Guests leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected turn. Jackson drew a deep breath, and then, in a voice clear and unyielding, he delivered the words that would utterly suspend time. Clara Reed, my ex-girlfriend, will always be a part of my life. A collective gasp, a ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Clara Reed. The name hung in the air, familiar to Jackson's inner circle, a woman with whom he'd shared a long, intense history before me. Jackson raised a hand, silencing the nascent chatter. I will never abandon her, whether as a friend or a business partner. Our relationship has changed, but our bond will exist forever. This is a part of me, a part of my past and my present. Then his gaze fully encompassed me, defiant, accusatory, as if I were already on trial. Amelia, if you don't like it, he declared, his voice echoing, a brutal dagger plunging into the festive atmosphere. If you can't accept that, then we'll call off this wedding. The world shattered. The music, the laughter, the gentle hum of conversation. Everything simply ceased. A spoon clattering somewhere distant echoed, like a cannon shot in the cavernous silence. Hundreds of eyes, moments ago filled with admiration, now swiveled, a wave of shock, pity, confusion, and a hint of cruel curiosity washing over me. My parents' faces blanched, my father's fists clenched beneath the table, my mother's jaw slack with horror. They, like everyone, waited for the expected breakdown, the tears, the drama, the desperate plea in response to such a callous, public ultimatum. But in that moment, I found myself in a soundproof bubble. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears, drowning out the whispers, the held breaths. I didn't see their judging eyes. I saw only Jackson, the man who had just stripped me bare emotionally before all our loved ones. Yet, what coursed through me wasn't shame or the searing pain of betrayal. Instead, a cold, astonishing clarity swept in. In those suspended seconds, every fragmented piece of Jackson's enigmatic behavior clicked into place. His evasiveness, his guarded phone, the late-night business calls. It all coalesced around one name, Clara Reed. This wasn't honesty. It was a declaration of power. Not a request for understanding, but a ruthless ultimatum. This relationship, ostensibly built on the pillar of truth, was nothing more than a contract with terms he'd just unilaterally dictated. And I, Amelia Hayes, knew I would not sign. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a surge of strengthening adrenaline. I met Jackson's defiant gaze, seeing the naked arrogance, his absolute certainty that I would bend, cry, and reluctantly capitulate to save face. He didn't know me at all. An almost imperceptible smile touched my lips, my eyes never leaving Jackson's. I reached for the microphone from the stunned MC, who, on pure instinct, handed it over. I brought it to my lips. The silence was deafening. I could feel my mother's pounding heart across the room, the collective tension of hundreds waiting for me to shatter. I drew a slow, steady breath. My voice, when it came, held no tremor, no sob. It was clear, unwavering, okay. One word. That was all. Then, with deliberate calm, I placed the microphone back. I turned, offering my parents a small, reassuring nod, an unspoken promise. I'm okay. With the elegance of a queen, I addressed the still frozen MC, my voice pitched normally. We can continue. I believe dessert can be served now. The impact was far more devastating than any scream or tearful outburst. Utter confusion rippled through the room. Guests exchanged bewildered glances. Jackson, above all, was stunned. His arrogant facade crumbled into sheer astonishment. This was not a script. He'd anticipated a fight, a surrender, but never this serene acceptance that felt paradoxically, like absolute rejection. I returned to my seat, picked up a glass of water, and drank slowly, as if Jackson's bombastic declaration had been nothing more than an awkward interlude. Amidst the debris of my shattered future, for the first time, Amelia Hayes felt utterly whole. I survived the remaining hour on autopilot. My smile, my nods, my polite thank yous to guests departing with awkward expressions. Many offered glances of pity, but I met them with such serene composure that they were the ones who averted their eyes in shame. Jackson tried to corner me several times. "Amelia, we need to talk. What did you mean by okay?" He whispered, his usual confidence frayed. "Later, Jackson." I replied each time, my voice polite but infused with an icy distance he couldn't penetrate. I had erected an invisible wall, and for the first time, he found himself outside. As the music faded and the lights began to dim, my family prepared to leave. I hugged Jackson's parents, their faces mirroring his confusion. "Thank you for coming," I said, as if nothing transformative had occurred. The drive home from the sprawling estate felt like a journey through another dimension. No one spoke. My father's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My mother stared out at the dimly lit streets, her thoughts visibly elsewhere. I watched the blur of my historic city, usually so warm and comforting, now distant and hazy. I wasn't sad. The overriding emotion was relief, as if a monumental burden, one I hadn't even realized I was carrying, had been surgically removed. I replayed Jackson's words, not with emotion, but with the cool, analytical logic of an architect examining structural flaws. His declaration wasn't a small crack. It was fundamental damage to the very foundation. A building can be repainted, its interiors redesigned, but a compromised foundation guarantees eventual collapse. Any attempt at superficial repair merely delays the inevitable. Better to demolish now and build anew on solid ground. The silence in the car wasn't empty. It was filled with my parents' love, their wounded dignity, and the unspoken question of what came next. They respected my space, allowing me to process. When my father finally cut the engine in front of our cozy home, he turned to me, his kind eyes now a storm of contained emotions. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and hoarse, "whatever you decide, your mother and I will always be behind you. Always." My mother turned, tears finally tracing paths down her cheeks. "Don't worry about what people will say. Just think about your happiness, honey." That unconditional support, delivered without question or judgment, was the only thing that nearly broke my composure. A warmth spread through my chest. I didn't cry, but reached out and squeezed my mother's hand. "Thanks, Mom." "Dad," I whispered. I knew what I had to do. My room, a reflection of my inner self. Pearl gray walls, minimalist wooden furniture, a large drafting table facing the window, was orderly, efficient, serene. I didn't slam the door or throw anything. I simply sat on the edge of my bed, letting the quiet night envelop me. My phone vibrated incessantly on the nightstand. Notifications, messages, missed calls. I glanced at the screen, dozens of worried texts from friends, countless missed calls from Jackson. I opened his messages. "Amelia, pick up the phone. We need to talk." "Amelia, did you do that on purpose to humiliate me with that ridiculous answer?" "Amelia, I was just trying to be honest. Why are you acting so childish?" "Amelia, answer me." I read them without emotion. His words were the final confirmation I needed. In the midst of crisis, Jackson's concern wasn't my hurt or our relationship's collapse, but his own bruised ego and damaged image. He twisted facts, cast himself as the victim of honesty, and labeled my reaction immature. I silenced my phone. There was nothing more to say. Everything had been made unequivocally clear, in front of hundreds of people. I moved to my drafting table, switching on the lamp. On the wall hung sketches of a wedding dress, blueprints for our future home, a color palette for the decor. For months, they had been a source of joy. Tonight, they were relics from someone else's life. With a decisive movement, I took down the papers one by one. I didn't rip them. I stacked them neatly and placed them in the bottom drawer. Out of sight, out of mind. Then, I opened my laptop, its light illuminating my calm, resolute face. I opened a folder labeled Wedding Prep AP, filled with subfolders: catering, venue, invitations, decor, photographer. I created a new document. Its title, Wedding Cancellation Plan. My fingers began to dance across the keyboard. Emails drafted for each vendor. Polite, professional, leaving no room for negotiation. The wedding to Jackson Pierce was canceled for personal reasons. I would cover all contractual cancellation penalties. As the first church bells tolled for dawn prayers, I finished. I stretched and went to the window. The eastern sky blushed with red. A new dawn. I was at peace. No regret, only certainty. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Gossip, family drama, a heart to heal. But for the first time in a long time, I felt complete control over my life. I picked up my phone, opened the contact for the invitation printer. Before hitting send on the first email, I paused. A faint smile. My engagement night had ended with an explosion, but from the ashes, Amelia Hayes was ready to rebuild her world on her own terms. The next morning, while much of Charleston still slept, I was already in motion. No dwelling on the past night. I channeled every residual emotion into action. With a hot cup of tea beside me, I opened the wedding cancellation plan document. The first action was the hardest, contacting Mrs. Davis, my wedding planner, a competent woman who had become friend. I took a deep breath and hit call. Hi, Amelia. To what do I owe this call so early? Last night's party was wonderful. All the guests were praising the concept, so excited for the final meeting at the estate next week. Mrs. Davis chirped. My heart beat a little faster, not from doubt, but from the knowledge of the shockwave I was about to unleash. Hello, Mrs. Davis. Thank you so much for all your hard work, but I'm calling to cancel everything. A beat of silence. Amelia, sorry, I think the connection isn't great. Did you say cancel? Cancel the wedding, Mrs. Davis. I stated, my voice calm and clear. My wedding to Jackson is not going to happen. I need you to stop all proceedings and contact all the vendors. I will cover all cancellation fees. Please send me a breakdown to my email. This silence was longer. I heard a sharp intake of breath. Amelia, this isn't a joke, is it? Was there a problem? Maybe you can talk it over. My decision is final, Mrs. Davis. I appreciate all your help. I interrupted softly but firmly. After that call, I felt the first significant weight lift. I began sending the emails I prepared, one by one, to the printer, the dress designer, the caterer, the estate manager. Each click of the send button felt like a step away from the ruins of a failed future. As I composed the email to the decor company, my parents entered my room. Their faces were tired. They hadn't slept either. Hi, Mom, Dad. I'm just handling the cancellations, I said, gesturing to my laptop, showing them I was already in action before they could hesitate or question. My father approached, seeing the vendor list. He let out a long sigh, but a flicker of relief shone in his eyes, seeing his daughter so strong. Let me handle the financial matters and the penalties. You just focus on yourself. No, Dad. This is my responsibility. I started this, and I need to finish it. I just need your support. That support came in the form of a bowl of hot soup from my mother and a gentle pat on the shoulder from my father. They didn't bombard me with questions. They trusted their daughter. Of course, the shockwave didn't stop there. Calls from relatives poured in, each voice laced with surprise and disbelief. I responded to each with the same calm phrases, leaving the callers speechless. Around noon, the real storm arrived. My phone rang. Jackson Pierce. I declined. Seconds later, an email notification popped up from the estate manager, CC'd to Jackson. Subject, confirmation, cancellation of wedding event. Jackson Pierce and Amelia Hayes. A text from Jackson immediately followed, all caps. Are you crazy? You actually did this without even talking to me. I read it and put my phone down. I knew Jackson would come, and I was prepared. Sure enough, that afternoon, a black sports car screeched to a halt in front of our house. Jackson emerged, his face red with anger, having not even bothered to park properly. He pounded on the door. My father opened it. Mr. Hayes, I need to talk to Amelia, Jackson demanded, skipping pleasantries. Come inside first, Jackson. Let's talk calmly, My father tried to pacify him. There's nothing to talk about calmly. I need to speak with her now. I appeared from inside. I'll handle this, Dad, I said serenely. I walked to the entryway, my expression blank. What is it, Jackson? His anger erupted. What is it? You canceled our wedding over email. You humiliate me in front of hundreds of people, and now you act like nothing happened? Where's your head? Amelia Hayes. My head is exactly where it should be, Jackson, I retorted coolly, in a place where I can think clearly. You were the one who humiliated both of us with that ridiculous ultimatum at our engagement party. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was honesty, Jackson shouted, his voice attracting the attention of passing neighbors. I just wanted you to understand my position. I was asking for understanding, and you repay me with this humiliation. Understanding is a two-way street, Jackson. It's discussed in private, not declared unilaterally in public to test your partner. That's not honesty, it's arrogance. I crossed my arms. Each sentence I delivered was a sharp, logical emphasis that disarmed his every argument. Jackson looked frustrated, running his hands through his hair. Fine. I was wrong. I chose the wrong time and place. But was this reaction necessary? Canceling everything? Do you know what this means for our families? For the Pierce Group's reputation? And there it was again. His concern wasn't my broken heart, but his family's image. This wedding isn't about your family's reputation, Jackson. It's about my life. And I'm not willing to spend the rest of my life with a man whose heart is still divided. I don't want to be a woman who always has to compete with the shadow of her husband's past. I never asked you to compete. My relationship with Clara is over. Really? Then why did you feel the need to proclaim it, as if it were a primary condition of our marriage? Why can't you let her go? Jackson fell silent. He had no answer. Seeing him speechless, I knew this was truly the end. There's nothing more to say. You should go, Jackson. Don't make a scene here. Jackson looked at me with a mix of anger and hurt. So that's it? After everything we've shared, we haven't shared anything yet, Jackson. And I'm grateful we're stopping now, before it's too late. I turned. Goodbye, Jackson Pierce. I walked into the house and closed the door, leaving him frozen on the porch. I didn't look back. I leaned against the door for a moment, taking a deep breath. No tears, only immense relief. The final battle was over, and I had won it for myself. Weeks passed, and the dust from the failed engagement slowly began to settle. I deliberately limited my social interactions, communicating only with my family and closest friends. I needed space to breathe, time to redraw the blueprints of a life that had suddenly been wiped clean. To fill the void, I plunged into what I did best, work. I contacted a senior architect I knew, letting him know I was looking for a new, challenging project, something that could absorb my entire attention. The opportunity came sooner than expected, a proposal to restore and convert a historic building, an old townhouse in the heart of Charleston's French Quarter. The building, long vacant, was to be transformed into a modern art gallery for a discerning collector. For me, this project was more than just a job. It was the perfect escape. The French Quarter, with its narrow cobblestone streets and echoes of history in every wall, was the ideal place to heal. The restoration itself felt like a metaphor for my life, taking something old, broken, forgotten, and giving it new life and purpose without erasing its original soul. The first day I visited the site, I fell in love instantly. The building was in a sorry state, peeling paint, a caved-in roof section, a courtyard choked with weeds. But its structure was solid. The old wooden columns stood with dignity, and the delicate ironwork of the balconies whispered stories of the past. I walked alone through the dusty rooms, running my hand over the cool plaster. I envisioned the light streaming through newly cleaned windows, the heart pine floors gleaming again after polishing, the modern art creating a beautiful contrast with the classic architecture. This project was complex, demanding precision, collaborating with the Historical Preservation Society, finding local artisans, designing a functional modern interior. It was exactly what I needed, a complex problem to solve, a beauty to create. Amidst the debris of the old building, I began to rebuild my own foundation, brick by painstaking brick. The building's owner was a man named Ethan Cole. Our communication had been limited to emails and phone calls, through which I'd formed an impression of a meticulous person with a strong vision and deep respect for historical value. That day, we were to meet in person for the first time. I arrived early, sketching in my notebook, absorbing every detail. Every time I come here, I discover a new detail I missed before, a calm voice said from behind me. I turned. A man stood in the doorway, framed by the afternoon light. He wasn't flashy like Jackson. His attire was simple, a linen shirt and cotton pants. His face wasn't conventionally handsome, but it radiated calm, and his gaze was sharp and observant, like an artist's. Like his name, Cole, he brought a serene presence. "Mr. Ethan Cole?" I asked, extending my hand. He smiled, his grip firm. "Please call me Ethan, and you must be Amelia Hayes, the architect. The sketches you sent me were more impressive than any resume." I was surprised by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you. I was also impressed by your vision for this place." We spent the next 2 hours walking through the building. Our conversation flowed naturally, not client and architect, but two people sharing a passion for art and beauty. We even had a small debate. Ethan wanted to preserve a deteriorated carved wooden mantelpiece for its sentimental value. From my architectural perspective, I argued its structural risk due to termite damage. "I understand the historical value," I said, gently tapping the wood. "But its core is eaten away. If we force it to stay, it will fail. How about we create a replica with the same details, using reclaimed wood, and frame the original salvageable pieces as a work of art on the wall?" Ethan was silent for a moment, looking from the mantelpiece to me. A glint of admiration appeared in his eyes. "That's a brilliant solution. You don't just think about function. You respect the soul. I like the way you work." As the sun fully set, casting a purple glow over Charleston, we sat on the dusty steps of the courtyard. Ethan, sensing a layer of vulnerability behind my professionalism, didn't pry into my personal life. He simply said, "I'm glad this place is in the right hands. I have a good feeling about this. It's going to be a masterpiece." Those words, purely about my work and skill, felt like a comforting balm to my weary soul. That meeting offered a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just a project. It was a collaboration. And for the first time in weeks, I felt I wasn't alone. Though I buried myself in work, the outside world didn't forget me so easily. The echoes of the failed engagement surfaced. One day, buying coffee, I ran into a distant acquaintance of Jackson's. "Amelia, how are you?" "Honey, I heard about you two. Such a shame, really. You seem so perfect together." Jackson seems to be under a tremendous amount of stress lately. I managed a slight smile. "I guess everyone has their own path, if you'll excuse me." I left quickly. On social media, I saw photos of mutual friends laughing with Jackson at events I was supposed to have attended. A small pang of exclusion, a reminder that breaking up with Jackson meant breaking up with a part of my world. But amidst the unpleasant gossip, the real support felt even stronger. My closest friends never wavered. They didn't pester me. They brought food, watched movies, or simply sat in silence when I was exhausted. If you want to be angry, scream. If you want to cry, cry. We're here. One friend told me, "My family was my most powerful fortress." My father often visited the site, bringing lunch with the excuse of wanting to see the progress. My mother quietly ensured my room was tidy, my needs met, creating a space where I could focus without worrying about the trivialities. This genuine, selfless support became my new foundation. I realized I'd been so focused on building a future with one person that I'd almost forgotten I already possessed a solid structure of people who loved me unconditionally. That afternoon, I stood alone on the second floor of the gallery, watching the sunset paint the Charleston sky. A month had passed since the night that changed my life. The road ahead was still long, still uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The rubble around me no longer seemed like the end of everything. Rather, it seemed like the beginning of something much more honest and strong, something built with my own two hands. The restoration project in the French Quarter was progressing faster than expected. Under my meticulous supervision, The old townhouse slowly regained its charm. The team of local artisans worked with enthusiasm, and noticeable progress was made every day. The site became my haven, a world where I had complete control and where logic and creativity merged in harmony. But one hot afternoon, that harmony was broken. A familiar black sports car pulled up, kicking up dust. Jackson Pierce emerged, looking profoundly different from the arrogant man I'd last seen. His hair was disheveled, his face gaunt, his expensive suit wrinkled. He carried a large bouquet of white lilies, my favorite flower. I was discussing something with the foreman and instantly felt a knot in my stomach. I signaled for the workers to continue and walked toward Jackson with a determined stride. "Jackson, what are you doing here? This is my workplace," I said, my voice low and sharp. "I know. I just wanted to talk," Jackson replied, offering the flowers. I didn't accept them. I just looked at him, waiting. "Amelia, I'm a wreck without you," he continued, his tone desperate, not angry. "Everything is a mess. My work, my life. I can't focus. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I should never have said that." It was the first time I'd heard him admit a mistake, but it felt hollow, like the wail of a child whose toy had been broken. "I'll change, Amelia. I promise. I'll fix it with Clara. I'll draw a clear line. Please, just give me one more chance," he begged. Just as I was about to respond, Ethan Cole emerged from the building with 2 bottles of water. He stopped, taking in the scene. He didn't approach, but stood in the doorway, giving me space. Yet, his presence felt like silent support. Jackson's eyes immediately caught Ethan's presence. The pitiful expression on his face instantly transformed into jealous sarcasm. "Ah, so that's what this is. You didn't waste any time finding a replacement. My patience ran out." "Stop it, Jackson," I hissed. "Don't drag others into the problems you created. My decision has nothing to do with anyone but you and your actions. Now, please leave." "But, Amelia, leave," I repeated, my voice louder this time, causing some workers to turn. "And don't ever show up at my workplace or look for me again." Jackson's face hardened. He roughly threw the bouquet of lilies to the ground. Without another word, he turned, got in his car, and sped away, leaving a cloud of dust and a pile of crushed white petals. I closed my eyes for a moment, calming my racing breath. Ethan slowly approached, offering me a water bottle. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, accepting the water. "I'm okay," I replied, and realized I truly was. The interruption from the past no longer held the power to ruin my day. The incident at the worksite left an uncomfortable residue in my mind. I realized that as long as the name Clara Reed remained a mystery, that shadow would always be present. I needed closure. As if fate had heard my thoughts, the next day, I received a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Amelia Hayes. This is Clara Reed. I heard Jackson came to your workplace yesterday. I think there are some things we should discuss for both our sakes. Would you be willing to meet?" I hesitated, but curiosity won over reluctance. This was my chance to get answers directly from a source. I agreed. We met at a quiet tea shop tucked away on a downtown side street. Clara Reed was already at a corner table, an elegant woman with a strong professional aura. Her face was beautiful, but her eyes held a hint of weariness. There was no trace of hostility in her gaze. "Thank you for coming," Clara said after we ordered. "I want an explanation, too," I replied frankly. Clara smiled faintly. "I won't waste your time. Jackson and I have a long history, that's true, but our romantic relationship ended over a year ago, long before he met you. The problem is, Jackson never quite learned how to be emotionally independent." She paused. "He still relies on me for validation, for business advice, for an ego boost. I've tried to distance myself many times, but he always finds a way to pull me back in, whether with the excuse of business or friendship. Honestly, I'm exhausted." "The declaration he made at your engagement party," Clara continued, her eyes meeting mine with regret. "He did that without my consent. I was as shocked as everyone else when a friend told me. It was Jackson's way of taking control, of proving he could have it all. You as his future, and me as his safety net. It was deeply unfair to you and to me. Then Clara showed me her phone screen. A picture of her with a man, both smiling happily. I'm engaged to someone else, Amelia. I'm trying to move on with my life, too. But Jackson keeps making things complicated. This was a turning point. I had imagined a complicated love triangle. The reality was much simpler and sadder. It was the story of an immature man holding two women hostage in the drama of his own ego. I understand, I said finally, relief in my voice. Thank you for being so honest with me, Clara. Thank you, Clara replied. At least now you know this was never about you not being enough. It was all about him not being mature enough. I left the tea shop feeling lighter than ever before. The last fog had lifted. I was truly free. The following days felt brighter. Freed from the weight of doubt, I dedicated myself to my work with renewed vigor. Progress on the art gallery accelerated. My relationship with Ethan also deepened. We were a solid team, understanding each other with just a glance. One afternoon, as we supervised the installation of the glass roof in the courtyard, the clear Charleston sky suddenly darkened. A strong wind rose, and a few raindrops quickly turned into an intense summer storm. Workers rushed to cover equipment and seek shelter. Ethan and I were trapped in the main, already roof space of the gallery, watching the rain dance on the still fresh concrete floor. The sound of the torrential downpour created an intimate, peaceful atmosphere. Rain always has a way of forcing us to pause, Ethan said, breaking the silence. He turned to me. You seem different these last few days. Lighter. I smiled. I've let go of a weight, I responded. I didn't feel the need to go into details, but I wanted to share the feeling. I just got the closure I needed. A long chapter of my life has completely closed. Ethan nodded with understanding. He didn't press. Instead, he looked at the rain. When my old gallery failed, I thought it was the end of the world. I blamed everyone, the circumstances. It took me a long time to realize that failure gave me the chance to stop, see what went wrong, and rebuild in a better way. Like this building. I looked at Ethan. He rarely talked about himself. Hearing a bit of his past made me feel more connected. We were both, in our own ways, people who were rebuilding. Sometimes demolishing something is just as important as building it, I replied softly. Exactly, Ethan said, because it gives you the chance to build a stronger foundation. We fell back into silence, but this time it was filled with meaning. It was just the two of us and the soothing sound of the rain. In the middle of a still, unfinished building, I felt I had found the most solid shelter, a place where I was understood without needing many words. Just as Clara had predicted, without her, as his unofficial advisor and emotional buoy, Jackson's business empire began to show cracks. Ruled by emotion and a bruised ego, he made a series of poor decisions. He became aggressive in negotiations, offended longtime clients, and ignored his team's advice. News reached me through an old friend. A major real estate project Jackson was developing in New York was on the brink of total collapse after a primary investor pulled out, citing chaotic management and his arrogant attitude. I felt no satisfaction, only a vague sadness at seeing someone self-destruct. That night, working late in my studio, I received a call from Jackson. This time, I decided to answer, feeling that perhaps this would be the last. The voice on the other end was panicked, desperate. There was no arrogance left, only despair. Amelia, it's all gone, he said, his voice trembling. The project failed. The investors are gone. It's all my fault. A pause. I waited. It's Clara's fault, too, he continued, his tone shifting toward accusation. She wouldn't help me at all. She left me alone. And then the blame turned to me. And it's your fault, too. If you hadn't left, I wouldn't be like this. I need you, Amelia. Why did you leave me when I needed you most? I listened calmly to the entire chain of accusations. Before, those words would have wounded me, but now I heard them as the voice of a stranger drowning in his own problems. Jackson, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Blaming everyone else isn't going to solve your problems. You made your own decisions in business and in our relationship. I hope you find a way to fix everything. I interrupted him, but that's not my job anymore. I have my own life now. Goodbye. I hung up before he could reply. This time I had truly, completely severed the last tie. I no longer felt anger or pity, or even cared. I just felt neutrality. And neutrality was the most absolute form of freedom. 2 months after my last conversation with Jackson, the art gallery project reached its first major milestone. The entire main structural restoration was complete. The new roof was installed, the old walls reinforced and repainted in their original colors, the heart pine floors polished to a shine. To celebrate, Ethan suggested a small toast just for the core team and the artisans. That afternoon, in the still empty Central Hall, we gathered to give thanks and share some food. The atmosphere was warm, filled with gratitude. For me, the moment was deeply emotional. I looked around at the high ceilings, the sturdy columns, the golden sunlight streaming through the large windows. I had done it. I had transformed ruins into something beautiful and hopeful. It was a tangible testament to my ability and perseverance. After the workers left, only Ethan and I remained. We stood side by side in the center of the room, contemplating our work in comfortable silence. There was a time I wasn't sure this place could be saved, Ethan said, his eyes scanning the room. But you saw its potential and brought it back to life. We brought it back to life, I corrected with a smile. It was a team effort. Ethan turned to face me, his gaze deep and soft. Amelia, he said, his voice more serious. Working with you these past few months has changed more than just this building. From the first day I met you, I admired your strength. I admire your talent, your way of seeing beauty where others only see ruins. But over time, I realized I wasn't just admiring Amelia Hayes, the architect. He paused, searching for the right words. I've grown to love you. The confession was quiet, sincere, without any pressure. Not a grand declaration, but an honest expression of feeling. I looked at Ethan's face, bathed in the sunset light. I saw warmth, respect, and sincerity. All the things I had once longed for. I didn't need to answer with words. The most genuine, brilliant smile I'd had in years spread across my face. In the middle of the gallery that had become the symbol of my own rebirth, I knew I had not only rebuilt a building, but I'd found a new foundation for my heart. And this time, it felt incredibly solid. Ethan's sincere confession that afternoon in the gallery opened a new door in our relationship. We didn't rush. Instead, we let the feeling grow organically, the same way we had cared for the old townhouse in the French Quarter. We were no longer just architect and client, but two souls creating something beautiful together. Our days were filled with happy activity. From morning until evening, we spent time at the project site, debating which paint colors best suited the natural light, or discussing the optimal placement of lighting for each piece of art. I focused on the technical and functional aspects, while Ethan brought the artistic and philosophical touch. We complemented each other perfectly. We often stayed after all the workers had left, sitting on a blanket on the still dusty floor, sharing a simple dinner from a container and talking about things beyond work. I told him about my dream of designing schools in rural areas. Ethan told me about his travels across the country to meet local artists. In these relaxed conversations, I found a peace I had never felt with Jackson. With Ethan, I didn't need to be the best version of myself. I could be my complete self. The sometimes too perfectionistic architect, the woman still learning to heal her wounds, the dreamer with sometimes strange ideas. And Ethan accepted it all, even adored every detail. I love how you furrow your brow when you're deep in thought, Ethan told me one night, brushing a strand of hair from my face. It looks like you're drawing the blueprints of the universe in your head. I laughed, my cheeks flushing slightly. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen as a human being with all my complexities, not as an accessory or an asset. The process of building the gallery became a metaphor for our relationship. Slow, thoughtful, respectful of the past, but with a clear vision for a bright future. When the gallery's interior work was nearing completion, Ethan surprised me. "Do you want to come home with me this weekend?" he asked casually. Not to my apartment, but to where I grew up. My mom has been wanting to meet the brilliant architect who transformed this old building. My heart fluttered. It felt like a big step. I remembered how formal and tense my first meeting with Jackson's family had been, so focused on image. But seeing Ethan's warm gaze, I knew this time would be different. Ethan's mother's house was in a small town in the countryside known for its artisans. The house was modest, a wooden home surrounded by a lush, well-tended garden. On the porch, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile was painting pottery. This was Mrs. Cole, Ethan's mother. The meeting was not awkward at all. Mrs. Cole greeted me with a warm hug, as if I were an old friend. She didn't ask about my family background or my education. Instead, she asked enthusiastically about the gallery's restoration process and the philosophy behind my choice of materials. "Amelia, you've saved the soul of that building," Mrs. Cole said as she served hot tea. "Thank you. That building was my late husband's legacy. Seeing it come back to life is the greatest happiness for us." I spent the day chatting comfortably on the porch, learning a little about pottery painting, and listening to stories of Ethan's childhood. I could see where Ethan got his serenity and love for art. In that simple, warm home, I felt unconditionally accepted. I wasn't a future daughter-in-law being evaluated. I was a cherished guest, appreciated for being who I was. As we were leaving at sunset, Mrs. Cole took my hands. "Take care of my son, please. Since he met you, his light has started to shine brighter again." On the way back, I was silent, my heart full. I looked at Ethan, concentrating on driving. The man beside me wasn't just a partner. He was a home, a solid foundation built on sincerity and the warmth of a family. A few weeks before the gallery's grand opening, I received a message from Jackson. It was short and in a completely different tone than before. "Amelia, could you give me a moment of your time for the last time? There's something I need to tell you in person. I promise I won't bother you." With my heart now calm, I agreed. We met at the same tea shop where I had met Clara. The Jackson who met me was a completely different person. There was no trace of arrogance left. He was thinner, quieter, and there was a maturity in his eyes that didn't exist before. He ordered a black coffee, not an expensive drink. "Thanks for coming," he began. "I won't take long. I just wanted to do something I should have done a long time ago." He looked me directly in the eyes. "I'm sorry." His voice was firm and sincere. "I apologize for everything I did, for my words at that party, for my ego, for my immaturity. I ruined something good because of my foolishness, and it's taken me months to realize it." He briefly shared that he had lost his business, but that it had become his turning point. He was trying to rebuild it from scratch in a more honest way. He also said he had cut all contact with Clara and wished her all the happiness. "I hear you're happy now," Jackson continued with a faint smile. "I'm glad. Truly, you deserve the best." I felt the sincerity in his every word. The last weight, when I wasn't even aware I was carrying, finally lifted. There was no more anger or disappointment, only peace. "Thank you for your apology, Jackson." "And I accept it," I replied. "I hope you rebuild a better life for yourself, too." We shook hands, a handshake that closed a chapter peacefully and maturely. When I left that tea shop, I knew the story of Jackson Pierce had truly become the epilogue in the book of my life. The gallery project was 100% complete. The building now stood majestically, a perfect blend of old-world charm and new-world spirit. To celebrate before the official grand opening, Ethan took me to one more place. "There's one more spot I want to show you, a place where I always find inspiration to start something new." He took me to White Point Garden. When we arrived, the afternoon sun was beginning to set, bathing the magnificent park and its historic monuments in a golden light. The atmosphere was magical and sacred. We walked among the old oak trees, talking about history, legacy, and the things that endure through time. As the sun nearly touched the horizon, painting the sky with a palette of purples, oranges, and reds, Ethan led me to a spot with a perfect view of the harbor. He stopped and turned to me. He didn't kneel. He simply took both of my hands in his own warm ones. "Amelia Hayes," he began, his voice soft but full of emotion. "Our story began at sunset in an old, nearly ruined townhouse. Then you came and transformed it into a place full of light and hope. You've done the same for my life." My eyes began to fill with tears. "I want to spend every sunset and every sunrise of my life with you. I want to build something with you that endures, not of stone, but of love and respect." He continued, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple, but exquisitely beautiful ring with a delicate detail engraved on it, inspired by the ironwork of the gallery we had restored. He had clearly designed it himself. "Will you marry me?" In the majesty of a historic park that had witnessed thousands of sunsets, my heart full of happiness, I answered with a trembling voice. "Yes, I will, Ethan." The night of the gallery's grand opening was a spectacular celebration, not of empty luxury, but of soul-deep richness. The space was filled with artists, collectors, friends, and family. Soft jazz music mixed with laughter and warm conversations. Every piece of art on display seemed to sing in unison, celebrating its new home. The gallery's name was Renaissance, symbolizing its new beginning. I stood in the middle of the crowd beside my fiancé, Ethan, dressed in an elegant ivory-colored gown. My face radiated a happiness I couldn't hide. My eyes scanned the room, taking in the dreamlike scene. My parents stood in a corner, watching me with pride. Across the room, I saw Clara Reed, who had attended with her fiancé. We exchanged a brief smile of understanding. That night, I gave a short speech. I spoke of the philosophy behind the restoration, of the importance of respecting the past to build a stronger future. When I thanked the team, my eyes met Ethan's. Everyone in the room could see the love and admiration that flowed between us. Later, as the event was in full swing, Ethan and I slipped away to the courtyard, which was now a small garden under the glass roof. From there, we could see the full moon shining brightly. I took a deep breath of the cool Charleston night air. I remember my engagement party a year ago, the humiliation, the confusion, and the cold decision I had made at the end of that night. Okay, that one word I'd spoken then wasn't a word of surrender. It was a word of beginning, the one that opened the door to my real life. I had weathered the storm, demolished the faulty foundation, and with patience had rebuilt everything from scratch. Ethan put his arm around me. "Look what we've built together," he whispered. I smiled and leaned my head on Ethan's shoulder. My name, Amelia, meant work and striving. After a long and dark eclipse, I was finally shining again, not with a borrowed light, but with my own complete and radiant. And beside me was Ethan, my steadfast companion, who wasn't trying to dim my light, but would always be there to join me in every sunrise and every sunset.